Hey, beautiful people, you sexy things. It's episode 43 of the Mistook for Swan, emergency broadcasting, podcasty, folk history, thingamajiggery thing. I'm feeling good. I am feeling so good because the days are getting longer. The light is getting brighter. The sun is out. Winter's on its way out. Well, it's January. I know, it's going to get colder before it gets warmer. But let's face it, the days are getting longer. Winter's on its way out. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling optimistic. Did you see that young woman, Amanda Gorman, recite that poem at Biden's inauguration? It was spectacular. If you haven't seen it, you should dial it up and check it out. She had that righteous fire. She had that power that you see in performers like Patti Smith. It gave me the chills. It was just amazing. It was all about the light, man. All about the light. There's always light if you got the power to see it, if you got the power to be it. So let's be it, my friends. Let's be that light. On this day in 1935, they started putting beer in tins. It's National Beer Can Appreciation Day. Yeah, I have emptied a couple tins of beer in my time, probably about a truckload. How about you? So that's a great thing. Around this time in 86, Voyager 2 did its first flyby of Uranus. And this is legitimate folk news, okay? Because I already told you how closely tied up the Voyager space project was with folk music. But I think at some fundamental primitive level, I just like it because I'm 7 years old inside. So I'm going to say it again. Around this time in 1986, Voyager 2 did the first flyby of Uranus. I know, it's stupid. It makes me happy, okay? So if you don't like it, fuck off. It is going to be Robbie Burns Day on Monday. So I know you've all been cooped up. You've all been isolated. You can't see your friends. So we're throwing a party. We're throwing a Burns Day official, full-on, full-blown party. And you're invited. So come on. First thing you got to learn is how to say cheers in Gaelic. The Scots say Gaelic. They don't say Gaelic, okay? So the way you say it is Slàinte. So it's spelled like this. I don't understand how those letters put together to make that sound, but they do, okay? So that's the way it works. So, Slàinte. Robbie Burns. What can I tell you about Robbie? The national poet of Scotland. Like the jewel in the crown of Scottish poetry. He's a rock star. He was a rock star in his own day. But he was from humble origins. He was a farmer. His dad was a farmer. When he grew up, it was hard labor. Like he was, plowing and threshing and winnowing and milling and, all that farmy stuff. It was hard work. Robbie's dad was always on the brink of poverty, of just like falling off the edge of the world and ending up in debtor's prison. Back in those days, they had this thing called debtor's prison. And believe me, you didn't want to go there. And Robbie knew this. So this kind of shaped Robbie's worldview quite a bit, is that he was always, throughout his entire life, worried that he might actually lose it and fall into abject poverty. And that's one thing to know about Robbie. Another good thing to know about Robbie is that he was a ladies' man. As my good Scottish friend says, he couldn't leave the ladies alone. So Robbie had 12 children with 4 different women. So Robbie never missed an opportunity to fall deeply, passionately, and physically in love with the beautiful lassies. So that was one thing. And as a result of that, or as a kind of parallel to that, let's say, Robbie wrote some of the most beautiful, memorable love poems that anyone has ever written. And they still stand up and they're still recited to this very day. Okay? So Robbie had a big heart. Robbie was a bit of a radical too. Let's not forget that this is the second half of the 1700s. The American Revolution just happened. The French Revolution is brewing. And there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk about liberty and fraternity and equality, and Robbie's in. Robbie's all for it. So he's a bit of a radical. He's a ladies' man, and he's a poet. So even while he is working in the fields as a young lad, he is writing poetry. So here's what happens. Robbie's dad dies. And so Robbie and his brother are kind of stuck. We're going, well, what the hell are we going to do? So they get a farm and they try and make this farm work. And they're working their asses off. It is hard, back-breaking labor. And eventually they realize it's just not working. We can't do it. We can't keep afloat. Now here's Robbie, worried about being in debt. Robbie has another problem. There's a bunch of people with legal actions against him about his status as father. Robbie. So Robbie says, okay, that's it. I've had it with this shit. I am going to move to Jamaica. I'm going to the New World. I'm going to start over. So his buddies say, hey, Robbie, okay, but you've got all these great poems, and all the local people think they're pretty great. So why don't you put them in a little book, and maybe you can sell it and make some dough for your trip to Jamaica? Robbie says, fantastic idea. I love that. So he goes through his poems, and he pulls out the two radical ones, the ones that are like a little too much, and he puts it together, and he makes this book called Poems Chiefly in the Scots Dialect. Now, it's in Scots, okay? So there's a debate about whether it's a dialect or a language. I'll let you guys duke that one out. I'm not going there, okay? I am not going there. But anyway, Scots is kind of like a mix of English and Gaelic. So you can read Robbie's poems, and they all make sense. They're in English, and then boom, you run up against a word that you go, I don't know what that means. So, but basically you can still puzzle it out, and you can recognize the genius of it. Okay, so the Poems Chiefly in the Scottish Dialect was a big success. It sold out. So Robbie's going, maybe I won't go to Jamaica. Maybe I'll go to Edinburgh. So he packs his little suitcase and he heads on up the road to Edinburgh, where it is the Athens of the North, they called it. There was a lot of really smart people there, and there was a lot of ideas in the air. There was a lot of intellectual ferment happening, and a lot of cultural things going on. It was a really happening place. So Robbie shows up. He is a hick from the sticks, right? He's a bumpkin. But the thing is, they love him. And he gets a good review. He gets a good review in the local paper, and they called him the heaven-taught plowman. Now, this is a little condescending, right? So, basically they're saying he's a bumpkin. He's just a little turd from the fields, but he's writing these amazing poems, and we love him. So Robbie basically runs with this. He grows his hair long. He gets a little ponytail. He's wearing buckskin and big boots, and he says, yeah, if you want me to be a clodhopper, I'll be a clodhopper. Just pay me. So they decide, okay, we got to put out a second edition of the Poems Chiefly in the Scottish Dialect, because it is fantastic. Okay, so he's working the local rich people, right? He goes to their salons and their soirees, and he reads them, and he's a good reader. He's a very, very dramatic, good presenter, and they love it. They love it so much that they all basically agree, yep, we're gonna buy your book. And so he puts out the second edition of Poems Chiefly in the Scottish Dialect, and it is also an enormous success, and it just sells out. And this book is ending up everywhere, not just in Scotland. So he makes a mistake here. He sells the rights to his poems, so he never makes another dime off of it after that. So he's living in Edinburgh, and he's still writing poetry, but he doesn't really have a job. And being Robbie, he's thinking, this could be bad. I could end up in debtor's prison here. So he goes to one of his newfound rich friends, and he says, listen, get me a job. I want to be a taxman. I want to work for the excise department. So his buddy says, really? Why would you want to do that? You're a great poet. But he says, no, I need a job. I need a steady income. So he gets the job. And he moves down to this little town, Dumfries, just south of Edinburgh. And he hooks back up with his wife, who's been separated with, and they have more kids. There's all more shagging going on. He's working like a slave. This job as the taxman, he's got to do a lot of traveling. There's long hours. And in between that, he's writing. He writes his masterpiece, actually, Tam Oshanter, which is a ghost story, which I'm going to tell you about in a bit. And he's still doing this other thing. So while he was in Edinburgh, he hooked up with this guy, James Johnson, who started up this project called the Scots Musical Museum. And the goal was to preserve as many of the old Scots songs as possible. So Robbie is all in on this. And basically, by the time they publish this thing, there's 600 songs, and Robbie is responsible for 200 of them, a third. So Robbie is hugely influential in preserving Scots folk music. And that it's the basis of Scots music, folk music, to this very day. So there's all these great songs. He's still writing all these great poems, but he's still got his job as the taxman. So here's Robbie's other problem: is he's got a big mouth. Okay, so Robbie likes to go down a pub And he's still a bit of a radical, and he might say something like in favor of the French Revolution or the American Revolution. And this gets him in shit because he's the government tax guy, and the government does not like their tax guys being radicals. So he's in a little hot water here. So what he does is England and France are at war now. So everybody's forming militias, and Robbie realizes, man, I better join the militia because I'm already in shit. If I don't join the militia, they're really going to be looking at me. So he joins the militia, and in those days, when you join the militia, you got to get your own uniform. So he hires this guy, this haberdasher, to build him a beautiful red uniform with nice shiny brass buttons and everything, and he goes into debt for this. So he gets his uniform. And then basically pretty much very shortly after that, his health starts to decline. He's working too hard. He's working long hours. He's got all his songs, his poems, his farm to run. He's got all these kids running around. He's starting to lose it. He's drinking too hard. He's going downhill. So what happens is this frickin' haberdasher puts a lien on Robbie and says, hey, you got to pay me for that uniform or I'm going to put you in debtor's prison. Robbie is losing it. This is what he did not want to have happen his whole damn life. So basically the last thing Robbie does practically is he writes a letter to his cousin saying, please, can you lend me 10 pounds? I got to pay this fucking haberdasher off or the whole family's going to go down. So anyway, Robbie retires to his bedroom and he dies. 37 years old, rheumatoid heart disease. And, hard life. He lived a hard life. His wife in the next room is enormously pregnant. And at his funeral 2 days later, his last son is born. And that's the story of Robbie. So at his funeral, there's like 10,000 people show up. He is a frickin' rock star. Even though he dies in poverty, he is so well known. So what happens is a couple of years later, a bunch of Robbie's old drinking buddies in his old town down there in Alloway, they decide to get together and they say, listen, we're going to have a little party for Robbie. We're going to celebrate him. He is Scotland's greatest poet, and we're going to keep his memory alive. God damn it. And we're going to drink some scotch and eat some haggis as well. So they start up the tradition of the Robbie Burns supper. And that has been going on ever since. And you and me are going to have one right friggin' now. Hang on to your hats.
All right. This is the Preemptive Personal Pardon. The triple P. I know, we've heard a lot about the self-pardon lately, but you didn't expect it to show up here, did ya? Well, here's the dealio. I understand that the Robbie Burns Day supper is an ancient and beloved tradition. And also understand that I'm not really Scottish, okay? I'm more Polish than Scottish. But, I'm going to do the best I can. So if I mispronounce something, or if I get something wrong, if I leave something out, I'm sorry. Now back to our regular programming.
All right, the party is on. It's the night of the party. Okay, you guys you're stumbling out of your Stutz Bearcats and your Duesenbergs and your Bentleys. Men, I assume you're wearing your kilts. You're wearing the colors. Ladies, you look fantastic, okay? Everybody's dressed to the nines. The pipes are piping you in to the great hall, okay? The host is welcoming you. He's telling you some things about Robert Burns. You already know. I told you. You know you're good, okay? So you go in to the big hall, and there's a big table, and you sit down at your spot at the table. And then the host says the Selkirk Grace. The Selkirk Grace is it's a grace. It's a thanksgiving prayer for the food. And it used to have a different name. It was called the Galway Grace years and years ago. But ever since Robbie Burns kind of took it over, it was his favorite grace, and it's known as the Selkirk Grace or the Burns Grace now. So the host stands up and he says this: "Some hae meat and canna eat, and some hae name that want it, but we hae meat and we can eat. So let the Lord be thanked." So in other words, some have got food and they can't eat it. Some want food and they want to eat it, but we got food and we can eat it. So chow down. All right, They're piping in the haggis. This is a big deal. I don't mean they're putting it in a pipe. You knuckleheads. No, it means that there's a piper, a bagpiper, and there's a procession, okay? So you're all around the big table, and here through the door comes a piper piping in the haggis. Behind him, the chef, who's got the haggis on a silver plate. Behind him is the man who's going to address the haggis. Okay, so 3 people are coming in. And like you may say, Steve, I forget, what's in a haggis? Let me tell you right now, you're better off not knowing. But if you must know, it's basically the innards of a sheep. Okay, so it's got the heart, the liver, and the lungs of a sheep. And then they mix in some beef suet, which is kind of gooey stuff. They throw in some oatmeal. There's onions, and they put in a bunch of spicy spices in it. They take this whole mess, and they stick it in the stomach of a sheep, and they boil it. Okay? So, are you happy you asked me that? All right. Anyway, so there you are. Robbie Burns wrote a poem called Address to a Haggis, and it is recited at every Robbie Burns dinner, and this is kind of the highlight of the dinner. The haggis is the star of the show. The haggis is why we're here, okay? So, the haggis comes up, they put it on the table. The man starts to read the address to the haggis, the toast to the haggis, the Robbie Burns poem. Okay, so this poem has eight verses. I'm not going to tell you what they all say, but the first one's kind of funny. So it says, I'll start out in Scots, and I apologize in advance. Okay, so it says, "Fair for your honest sonsy face, great chieftain o' the puddin' race. Abune them you take your place, pench, thrape, or therm. Weel are you worthy of a grace, as long's my arm." Okay, so in English it means, good luck to you and your honest plump face, great chieftain of the sausage race. Which, I mean, how fantastic is that? Chieftain of the sausage race. Above them all you take your place, stomach, tripe, and intestines. Well are you worthy of a grace, as long as my arm. Okay, everybody's getting excited when they start hearing those words, and they know what's coming up. Because in the third verse, there's this line about his knife and his rustic labor, and basically at that point the chef grabs this big knife and stabs the haggis. Okay, so apparently a word to the wise, haggis are hot, and it's filled with hot goop. So if you just stab it, there have been cases of sort of serious haggis burns. So the good thing to do is to make a little slice first before you stab it. But it's very dramatic, and they stab the haggis, and then they finish off the poem. At the end of the poem is the line, "Gie her a haggis," so give her a haggis. And the whole poem is about how tough Scotland is, and how measly and watery and wussy is everybody else on earth. That's pretty much the gist of the poem. And so give us a haggis. And then when they say that, everybody erupts into applause, and they start drinking scotch. Okay, so go to it. Okay, finally, the meal. It's time to eat. We're starving, okay? It's going to start off with soup, usually a fish soup, something like Cullen skink, which is a smoked haddock soup. Or it could be the amusingly named cockaliki. I don't know what that is, okay? Or it could just be Scotch broth or potato soup. So you eat your soup, then it's time to dig into the haggis. And with your haggis, you've got neeps and tatties. Neeps and tatties, you say. Yes, neeps and tatties, they're turnips and potatoes. So you got this big spread, and you are washing this down with generous lashings of wine and good malt Scotch liquor. Okay, so the spirits are going down, and the spirits are going up. It's time for the first entertainment. All right, dinner's over. Everybody's full. Okay, it's time for the first entertainment. And some brave soul will raise their trembling little hand nervously and go, "I can recite a Robbie Burns poem." So here we go. Tam Oshanter. Tam Oshanter is a ghost story, okay? It's situated in the little town where Robbie grew up. Okay, so it's Ayr is the name of the town, which is just like next door to Alloway, which is where he was born. And there's a little river that goes through town called Doon. And our hero is called Tam Oshanter. And Tam is in the pub. He's down a pub. He's drunk. It's late. He's been there all afternoon drinking. He's flirting with the bartender. He's worried about his wife, who's going to give him shit when he comes home. His wife has always said, "You're going to drown in the Doon River when you come home drunk one day, running away from all them witches and devils at the haunted Alloway Galloway Church. Okay, but finally they kick him out. He's got to go. John Barleycorn has made him brave. So he hops on his worn out horse and he's going along the road and he goes by the haunted church and he's amazed that he looks in there and it's filled with witches and devils, and they're having a party, and they're making a racket, and they're having a great old time, just like being witches and devils. And he's watching them and watching them. They don't see him yet, okay? So he's watching them, and then he sees one of the witches whose skirt is cut so high that it kind of doesn't leave anything to the imagination. And he goes, "Oh my goodness, that's a cutty sark," meaning that's a short shirt. And all of a sudden, all the witches and devils go silent. And they go, "Who's watching us? Shit." And they look out and they see Tam Oshanter on his broken down horse. And they just make a beeline for him. They are whipping out, they're flying, and they're scary, right? Tam Oshanter starts whipping his horse. Now here's the thing is that if you're being chased by witches, they can't follow you over water. Everyone knows this, right? So he is headed for the Doon River as fast as he can, and just as he gets to the bridge, a witch grabs his horse by the tail, and he gets over the bridge, but his horse's tail doesn't make it over the bridge. So he's on the other side, he gets away. That was a close call, Tam Oshanter. Don't mess with those witches. All right, we've had our meal, we've had our entertainment. It's time for the toasts. The toasts come in 3 sections. First toast, to the man himself, Robbie Burns. People will get up and toast to his immortal memory, to his politics, to his poetry, to his folk songs, and above all, to his Scottishness, because it's all about the nationalism. Next toast, the toast to the lassies. Men get up and they make witty and amusing toasts to their significant others and the women in the room, and hopefully they live to tell the tale. Lastly, the ladies, the toast to the laddies. The ladies get up and they make witty and amusing toast to the men and put them rightly in their place. So, a lot of drinking been going on. We've been drinking all damn night. And so what happens now is everybody's loose as a goose, and it's the time for the final entertainment. So people just start singing songs. Usually it's Auld Lang Syne, but it can be any song. It can be any Robbie song. So let's do one, okay? The final entertainment. Hope you like the meal. Hope you like the party. Hope you like the toasts. If you're drunk, don't drive home. I'm going to leave you with a beautiful love song by Robbie Burns. My love is like a red, red rose. Oh, my love is like a red, red rose. It's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. So fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I. I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas gang dry. Till all the seas gang dry, my dear, the rocks melt with the sun. I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. Fare thee well, my only love, fare thee well a while. I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 miles. Though it were 10,000 miles, my love, though it were 10,000 miles, and I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 miles. red, red rose, it's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like a memory, it's sweetly played in tune. So fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I. I will love thee still, my dear, till all